Okay, so in the last video, I told you that we would look at the Tariff of 1828, or the Tariff of Abominations, and so that's what we're going to look at right now. And really, what one of the key questions when you're talking about a tariff is, what is the government's role in the economy? What is their role in picking who's going to be successful and not successful? Should they be involved in that, and how much should they be involved in that? So first, we need to make sure we understand what a tariff is. And tariff is simply a tax on imports. And so you can see in this graphic on the right-hand side that a tariff. Let's say you have cloth in America that costs $6 a roll, but then you've got British-made cloth that sells for $5 per roll in the United States. Well, with a tariff, let's say you put a 25% tariff on it, as you can see right here. Well, you put a 25% tariff on a $5 roll of cloth. That's going to add $1.25 per roll. So now, instead of it costing $5, it costs $6.25. Well, this is a significant increase in the price for the British cloth, and therefore what happens is the British cloth now costs more, so more people will buy the American made cloth, which helps American businesses. The American cloth doesn't become more expensive. It's the same price it always has been, but now it's more competitive. You see, what you've done is you've given this American company a little bit of an advantage. The British company could make the cloth at a cheaper price, and therefore people would buy that cloth. Well, now you make the British cloth more expensive, and you're helping out that American company. All of that sounds great, and it is good for American manufacturing and American textiles or cloth manufacturers, but there is there is another side to that story. Southerners hate the tariff. Well, what is it about the tariff that they don't like? Well, first off, before they could get cloth for less. It costs $5, and now the cheapest cloth they can get is $6. And that may not sound like a lot, but that's a pretty significant. That's a lot more money back then than it is today. And we're talking about all across the southern states that's going to be an issue, because they bought cloth. But that's not the big problem for the southern states. That's not really the big problem. We'll see here what the bigger issue is for them. What really happens is British reduce their imports of cotton from the United States, because the British are now selling less cotton. So the British were selling cotton to the United States, or selling cloth to the United States. Well, where were they getting the cotton to make that cloth? They were getting it from the South. They were getting it from southern states. So the real impact on the South is that they're selling less cloth to Great Britain, and they're making less money. Now, some of that difference should be made up in the fact that now the American companies are purchasing more, and they can sell more to the American companies. So some of that difference would be made up, but not necessarily all of the difference. As a matter of fact, it didn't make it work out to all the difference. And so the tariff forced the South to buy manufactured goods from U.S. Now, it says forced. It doesn't technically force them, but it makes American manufactured goods cheaper than the British goods, and therefore people will buy that. But it's now still a higher price. And so people are spending more money to get the same products that they were getting before. Southern states are also facing a reduced income, as we said, because the British are now buying less cotton. And so that impacts the southern states. So what happens, though, here is the U.S. experienced economic growth during this time period from 1828 to 1832. But most of that growth, is a result of increased manufacturing. There's actually a decrease in some of the southern economic indicators. And so the South's economy gets worse and the North's economy gets better. And so you can see why we have this question of, should the government decide to put a tariff or not put tariffs? What is the government's role in taxing goods from other countries? Because it has an impact on not just manufacturing. It helps manufacturing, but it hurts other groups as well. And so what is the government's role? Should they do that? Should they not do it? and that is answered different ways by different people, and usually it depends on the region of the country and who's going to be impacted by it. So, and today, one of the things that's been talked about is will Donald Trump put an import tax on goods coming in from Mexico? A 20% tax. Well, in some places, that sounds like a good deal to them because that's going to help American manufacturing, help American jobs, and provide them with a more competitive price on their goods because things are made more cheaply in Mexico. On the other side of that, though, in a state like Texas, where a lot of goods are imported from Mexico and then sold here, those businesses are going to see a detriment to their business. And so, depending upon your location and depending upon your economic activity in that region of the country, different taxes on different groups and different items are going to be experienced different ways. So that's the Tariff of Abominations.